Hello, my name is Sarah Thompson, and I want to share something terrifying that happened to me in Los Angeles during the terrible wildfires of 2024. I work as a freelance photographer and was documenting the fires in the Angeles National Forest area near San Fernando Valley. It was around 7:30 p.m. on October 15th. The sky was a frightening orange hue due to the smoke from the fires. I was positioned in an elevated area in La Tuna Canyon, trying to capture some photos of the advancing fire when everything began. The temperature was absurdly high, about 105 degrees to 40 degrees, even though it was nighttime. Suddenly, I noticed something strange in the sky. Initially, I thought they were firefighter helicopters, but the movement patterns were completely different. 3 lights in a triangular formation hovered over the burning area. They emitted a pulsating bluish glow that seemed to communicate with the flames below. The scariest part was when I realized the fire began to behave unnaturally. The flames formed perfect geometric patterns, as if they were being controlled. I managed to photograph everything, but when I tried to review the images on the camera, they appeared distorted, with strange pixelated patterns. That's when the real terror began. The temperature dropped drastically in a matter of seconds. My car, which was parked about 50 meters away from me, started beeping frantically, all the lights flashing uncontrollably. My cell phone died instantly, even with 98% battery. I heard a deep humming, so intense it made my bones vibrate. The 3 lights in the sky began to expand, and a kind of greenish mist descended to the ground. The fire, instead of retreating with this mist, seemed to dance with it, creating huge spirals that rose hundreds of meters into the air. I tried to run to my car, but my muscles felt paralyzed. That's when I saw something emerge from the mist. Humanoid silhouettes, but definitely not human. They were extremely tall, about 10 feet, incredibly thin, with disproportionately long limbs. Their heads were elongated, and where their eyes should have been, there was only a luminescent strip pulsating in sync with the lights in the sky. These creatures seemed to be harvesting something from the fire. Their long fingers made fluid movements, and the flames responded as if they were liquid. The most disturbing thing was the absolute silence that settled in. Even the crackling of the fire could not be heard, just that deep, penetrating hum. I managed, with great effort, to grab my cell phone and try to record, but the device was completely dead. My legs were shaking, and I felt a mix of terror and fascination. The creatures seemed to be performing some kind of ritual with the fire, and with each of their movements, the flames changed colour, going through shades I didn't even know fire could assume. What happened next still haunts me to this day. One of the creatures noticed my presence and turned its head in my direction. There was no facial expression, but I felt an overwhelming mental pressure, as if something was rummaging through my memories. Images began to flash in my mind, visions of Los Angeles in flames, but they were not the current fires. They seemed to be from the future. I saw the city completely transformed. Giant crystalline structures emerged from the burned rubble, and the sky had a perpetual purplish-green hue. The most disturbing thing was the symbols that appeared repeatedly in the visions, complex geometric patterns that seemed to change shape when you tried to focus on them. The creature began to approach me. Its movements were too fluid to be natural, as if it were gliding through the air. With each step it took toward me, the air became denser and electrified. My hair was standing on end, and I tasted metal in my mouth. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. That's when I noticed other people starting to appear in the area. They were firefighters and rescue teams who had probably come to check this part of the hillside. However, they seemed to be in some kind of trance. They walked mechanically, their eyes completely black, reflecting the strange lights in the sky. The creature stopped about 2 meters away from me and extended one of its long fingers in my direction. The moment it did this, all the flames within a radius of kilometers extinguished simultaneously, leaving only pulsating embers that formed those same symbols I saw in my visions. The silence was broken by a sharp sound, like thousands of voices whispering at once. The other 2 creatures joined the first one, and I realized they were engaging in some kind of communication with each other. The entranced firefighters formed a circle around us, still with that empty black gaze. Suddenly I felt something being inserted into my mind. It wasn't exactly words or images, but a deep and terrifying understanding. These beings were not here by chance. The fires were part of a larger process, a planned transformation of our environment. I saw through their eyes for a moment, as I experienced that nearly drove me insane. Our reality was just a thin layer over something much vaster and incomprehensible. The fires were portals, contact points between our dimension and theirs, and they were using the fire to alter the very structure of reality in Los Angeles. One of the entranced firefighters began to speak, but their voice was not human. It was as if multiple voices were speaking simultaneously, in different tones and languages. The message was clear. The process has begun. The transformation is waited, inevitable. Los Angeles will be the epicenter. What happened in the following hours completely changed my perception of reality. The creatures began a process that I can only describe as dimensional harvesting. The air around us began to crystallize, forming impossible geometric structures that floated and intersected. The firefighters in a trance began to perform synchronized movements like a macabre dance. Their bodies emitted a greenish light through their pores, and their shadows moved independently, slithering across the ground like living creatures. The smell in the air changed drastically. It was a mix of ozone with something organic and alien, impossible to describe in human words. That was when I noticed something even more disturbing. Small energy vortices began to form at the spot where the flames had been. From these vortices emerged what appeared to be fragments of other realities. I saw distorted versions of Los Angeles. In some, the city was made entirely of living crystal. In others, pulsing biomechanical structures replaced the skyscrapers. The creatures began to extract something from these vortices, a substance that seemed both liquid and gaseous, glowing with colours my human eyes had never seen before. Every time they collected this substance, I felt a ripple in reality itself, as if the fabric of space-time was being stretched and twisted. I tried to move, but my body felt trapped in some kind of invisible force field. That was when I realised I was no longer breathing, not in the conventional sense. It was as if the air had transformed into something denser, more informative. Every molecule that entered my lungs carried data, memories, and sensations that did not belong to me. One of the trance-bound firefighters approached me and began to speak in a voice that seemed to come from multiple dimensions simultaneously. You have been chosen as a witness. What you are witnessing is just the beginning. Los Angeles is a nexus, a point of convergence. The fires are merely the catalyst for something much greater. The creatures then began an even more bizarre process. Their bodies started to unfold into impossible angles, revealing geometries that made my mind scream in protest. It was as if they were transforming into living portals, connecting our reality to something far beyond human comprehension. The sky above us began to tear apart, revealing a void that was not black, but filled with infinite fractal patterns that moved and pulsed as if they were alive. The city lights began to flicker, not just blinking but changing position, as if the very urban geography was being rewritten. I felt something being implanted in my memory, information, symbols, and knowledge that no human being should possess. I saw the true purpose of the fires. They were not destruction, but transformation. Each flame was a code, each ember a cosmic program being executed to rewrite the matrix of reality. The creatures finally finished their bizarre ritual, but what they left behind was only the beginning. Los Angeles would never be the same, and I knew I had become part of something much larger and more terrible than I could imagine. In the months that followed that night, Los Angeles began to manifest subtle but deeply disturbing changes. First, there were the collective dreams. Thousands of people reported having the same night visions, crystalline structures emerging from the ground, alien symbols pulsing on the walls of buildings, and the sky opening up to reveal overlapping realities. I began to notice that the areas affected by the fires were not recovering normally. The vegetation that grew was different, plants with impossible geometries, flowers that emitted their own light at night, and trees whose shadows moved in the opposite direction of the sun. Scientists trying to study these anomalies frequently disappeared, or were found in a catatonic state. mumbling about interdimensional patterns. In January 2025, the first fold events began to occur. People reported entering a building in Chaiti, downtown LA, and exiting in alternative versions of the city. Some returned different, their eyes glowing with a greenish hue similar to that of the creatures I saw, their words laden with impossible knowledge about the nature of reality. The most frightening part was how the authorities seemed to deliberately ignore these occurrences. When I tried to publish my photos and accounts, I encountered an invisible yet powerful resistance. Files mysteriously disappeared, emails self-corrupted, and recordings turned into static noise. It was as if something was actively suppressing any evidence of what was happening. The firefighters who had been present that night were never the same. I found some of them months later. Their movements were different, more fluid, almost inhuman. They spoke about their work with an impossible technical knowledge, describing fire not as an element, but as a tool for dimensional reconfiguration. On certain nights, when the moon is in a specific phase, the crystalline structures I saw in my visions begin to partially materialize, like semi-transparent holograms overlaying the existing buildings. Sensitive people can see them, and many report feeling a mental pressure, similar to what I experienced during my encounter with the creatures. The fires continued, but with a different pattern. They followed precise geometric shapes when viewed from above, and the flames sometimes seemed to freeze in time, creating fire sculptures that lasted for hours. Rescue teams reported finding symbols etched into the burned ground, the same ones that had been implanted in my mind that night. Technology began to behave erratically in the city. GPS devices were showing impossible locations, phones were picking up conversations from other dimensions, and security cameras were occasionally capturing images of a different Los Angeles. Superimposed over ours, a city of crystal and light, inhabited by forms that defied human comprehension. I discovered that I was not alone in my experiences. A secret group of witnesses formed, people who had similar encounters during the fires. We would gather in safe locations to share information and try to understand what was happening to our city. In recent weeks, our findings have become even more alarming. Through our network of witnesses, we identified that Los Angeles was not chosen by chance. The city is built on an ancient nexus of energy that Native American peoples already knew of and avoided. The fires and the creatures are using these power points for something much larger. At our last secret meeting, held in a modified basement with special protections in Echo Park, one of the witnesses, a former Caltech physicist, presented data showing that the very atomic structure of the air in LA is changing. The space between the molecules is expanding impossibly, creating pockets where the laws of physics do not fully apply. The most disturbing thing is that we began to notice changes in ourselves. Those who witnessed the events developed strange abilities. Some can see through the layers of reality, others can predict exactly where and when the next folding events will occur. I myself realized that I can understand the alien symbols that appear during the fires. They are a cosmic programming language. Last week, during a new fire in Griffith Park, we managed to document something extraordinary. The creatures returned, but this time they were building something. Using fire as a tool, they were literally weaving a new matrix of reality over the city. We saw how each flame was precisely positioned, creating a complex network of energy that is slowly transforming Los Angeles into something that is not entirely of this universe. The trance-like firefighters now seem to be part of a larger hierarchy. They act as intermediaries between the creatures and our reality, preparing specific locations for future transformations. We discovered that some of them no longer sleep and can spend entire days performing complex calculations that seem to predict where the next dimensional alterations will occur. The most frightening thing is that we identified a temporal pattern. All significant events happen at mathematically precise intervals, following a sequence that points to a specific date in the near future, June 21st, 2025, the summer solstice. Our analyses suggest that this will be the moment of a final convergence. Some witnesses have begun to mysteriously disappear. Others have been found in altered states of consciousness, their minds seemingly connected to other dimensions. Those who remain are divided between those who see this transformation as a necessary evolution, and others who believe we need to stop this process before it is too late. I keep this record in the hope that someone will understand the true magnitude of what is happening in Los Angeles. The city is not just changing, it is transforming into a portal, a point of transition between realities. The fires, the UFOs, the creatures, all are part of a larger plan to rewrite the very nature of reality. If you are reading this, know that Los Angeles is no longer just a city. It is the epicenter of a cosmic transformation that will affect all of humanity. The signs are everywhere, for those who know where to look. The creatures continue their silent work, and each new fire brings us closer to the final moment of transformation. This is my final testimony. Whatever happens on June 21st, 2025, will forever change our understanding of what is real. Los Angeles will be ground zero for a new era. The question remains whether we will be prepared for what is to come.